Arknights Endfield first technical test has just been concluded, and I have to admit, the game does look pretty impressive. What's more interesting is that they were allowing any playtester to share their playthrough on YouTube. It is most likely to build up hype and to open themselves up for feedback, which is exactly what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to comment on the specific design choices and my own personal preferences about Endfield. I will either praise the design or I will make some suggestions on how the devs can improve it. Do note that I'm making observations based on what I see at the time of recording, and Endfield is still in active development, so everything can change at any time. All of the clips used in this video are taken from Kyostin playthrough, and all are linked in the description of this video. Endfield is a limited open-world game. The world is divided into multiple zones, and you can freely explore each zone within a fixed boundary. Along the way, you can find some hidden chests and collectibles, sometimes requiring some parkour, but note that you cannot climb the walls in this game. Now, I have no problem with small open-world games. However, I have some concerns about Endfield world design. In the technical test, every area seems to be made to be traveled just once and never again. If you return here, it will probably be for grinding. And aesthetically speaking, my complaint from the previous video still stands, where I say that Endfield world appears dead. For most part, the game world is a barren landscape. There are no impressive vista or points of interest to see or visit. Now, I know there are probably some lore explanations for it, but if you are the type of player who doesn't care about the game lore, I highly doubt you'll fall in love with Enfield's world aesthetic. It's not a fair comparison, but Teyvat in Genshin Impact does have a lot of beautiful places you can go to and explore. It becomes the major selling point of the game. What I'm trying to say here is that I don't think the exploration aspect of Endfield is appealing to a mass audience, at least not in this technical test. I'm not sure how well they're going to compete against similar games. For the daily activities, Endfield followed the basic Genshin formula. You can do 3 daily quests and spend your sanity in domains to get some resources. It is fine. It's a true and tested game mechanic. Non-intrusive activities, something easy to do and get done within 20 minutes. However, I was honestly expecting Endfield to innovate new mechanics to fix the monotony of open-world gacha games. But I have to admit, I can't think of any new daily activities that make gacha games more fun. Let me know if you have some ideas in the comment section down below. There have been very serious concerns on the monetization of Endfield ever since the demo was first shown. Unfortunately for now, those concerns have not yet been addressed since this technical test doesn't have any gacha system in it. However, I can see some places where they can put the gacha mechanic into it. Character gacha is definitely a given, but there are also weapons, weapon mods, and operator gears that can also be monetized. In this test, a lot of them can be crafted in the factory, but then again, we don't know if that will remain the case in the final game. As for the progression, I don't have a lot to say about the gear progression in Endfield. It's just the same level up system with any other gacha games. But I do have to applaud them for doing better than Genshin in giving fixed stats to gears and weapons, so no RNG is involved in getting substats for your setups. In my opinion, the biggest selling point for Endfield will be its base building automation. I have to say that whatever they have here is a very good start. I think there is an unexplored market of live service Factorio games, so I really hope they'll go hard on this mechanic, because this is definitely something that I personally will sink a lot of time into. Of course, there is also one big problem with any automation games, and that is there is very little reason for you to change your setup once you get what you want. So here's hoping they'll add plenty of depth to it. Maybe they'll keep adding new machines into this automation process with every update. Like maybe adding a way to stack the machines vertically. Because the last thing we want is to have this entire base building mechanic to be a gimmick that is long forgotten as the game gets older, just like the base building mechanic in the original Arknights. Just like in Arknights, some character progression items can be produced by these production lines. Again, I have very little to comment on the leveling up mechanic. It's just some basic gacha progression. However, I am quite disappointed that all characters have exactly one set of abilities with no way to swap it. Except for the administrator, who have two basic abilities that you can choose from, and she is the only 6-star character. Does that mean only 6-star characters can have multiple abilities, just like in Arknights? I sincerely hope that's not the case. And even then, you can only swap the basic ability, not the ultimate. Judging from their design direction, they seem to try their best to adapt Arknight's mechanics into Enfield. So I would not be surprised if there will be multiple abilities on later updates just because 6-star operators in Arknights have 3 abilities. I'm hoping we'll get something similar to post-Honkai Odyssey in Honkai Impact, where every character has 2 basic abilities and 2 ultimates to choose from. Each one is better suited for a specific team composition. If they do make this will add so much versatility and strategic value to every character and every possible team composition. If they didn't do that, then it's probably because they want the players to pull more gacha. After all, why make so many abilities for a single character when you can make 2 characters with less abilities? And finally, we got to the combat. Enfield is a real-time action game, where the battle will be paused when you're aiming any abilities. You can have up to 4 abilities, each one coming from your party member. And you cannot use your abilities while jumping. And here is my first problem with the combat mechanic. I think 4 abilities are way too few for Enfield to make any meaningful combos. I will be happy if they later decide to add in 2 extra abilities, maybe as gadgets that you can equip. What I do like is how you can interrupt the enemy's attack by timing your abilities. That requires skill. That is something you can get good at by just leveling up your character. That skill requirement is how we love Arknights in the first place. There are 2 combat mechanics introduced in this technical test: toughness meter and elemental system. We did notice this shield mechanic in the demo videos, but now we have concrete numbers. When the enemy's toughness is 0, the enemy will enter broken state and get stunned for several seconds. Broken enemies take 50% more damage during this period. So yes, it's quite similar to post-Honkai Odyssey. The system itself is not bad, but it can have some problems. There are 2 ways to implement this toughness mechanic. You can write broken enemies take 50% more damage during this period, or you can write take 50% less damage when not in broken state. On the surface, it might seem similar, but there is a massive difference between them. The first one is a recommendation, something you can do, but you don't have to. The second one is an enforced rule. You are actively punished if you do not play the intended way. On their own, neither is good or bad. Having a more relaxed rule does encourage a more creative gameplay, and having a stricter rule means beating any difficult bosses feel more satisfying. What will make it bad is if an endgame player can just ignore the toughness mechanic entirely by dealing an insane amount of damage, which is more likely to happen with the former. I'm afraid that's what happened in this clip. And unfortunately, there is an elemental system in this game, which I personally don't like. It's quite similar to the danger seed mechanic in Genshin. Different abilities can spawn this little orb that can be reacted with other elements, or the same elements as itself, and it will cause different reactions. All elemental reactions reduce enemy toughness no matter which one you choose. Again, my problem with the elemental combat system is that at its skill ceiling, it turns everything into a pure numbers game. Combine X and Y and you get Z% more damage. Its sole existence is to just multiply your damage. You don't even need to change to another reaction. You just repeat the same reaction over and over and over again. In theory, when we combine these two mechanics, then you just need to spam as many reactions as possible to break the enemy's toughness. No timing or thinking needed. And right there is how you create a mindless combat system, or Genshin 2.0. The only way I can see how Endfield can distinguish itself from Genshin is if every combat is more punishing. The worst part of Genshin's combat is how you can die. Get a healer or a shielder and you basically become immortal. The bosses can kill you fast enough to be a real threat. And if you miss your combo, you're just losing time. That's why they have to create an artificial time challenge called the Spiral Abyss. If Enfield's core combat is about finding an opportunity to do your combos while knowing full well that the enemy can instantly kill you if you make any mistake, then that will be a very good combat system. However, it's really hard to tell if that is the case. You do require thinking in boss fight because the bosses hit hard, but is it just because the players are underleveled? And then there are these moments where a single spam ultimate can just decimate the normal enemies without thinking. So which one is it? Do you need to think in Enfield's combat? I don't know, I just have to try it myself. If Hypergriff want to, there are many ways to make Enfield's combat more strategic. They can make the toughness mechanic more stringent, like in Posongkaya Odyssey, where enemies can only be damaged once their toughness is 0. So even against normal enemies, you have to peel their toughness first. Or they can diversify the elemental system, where some reactions are focused more on dealing damage, while the others are for peeling enemies' toughness, or extending the stun duration. This diversity makes triggering a reaction a strategic choice, depending on the current condition in the battlefield. You guys are smart, so let me know what you think about Enfield's combat mechanic in the comment section down below. Regardless of my complaints about the combat mechanic, the boss fight in Endfield looks very cool. It's an organized chaos and an actual challenge to the player. This is what I want every battle in Endfield to be. A combat flow to find the opportunities to peel the boss toughness and then burst them with ultimates once they're down. And I do love how the bosses can easily two-shots you to death even with your unlimited heals, and they don't go down easily because they have a huge amount of health. But then again, this might be just because the playtesters are underleveled. Maybe a max-leveled, max-geared operator can sustain more hits, and easily make a combo chain that can easily one-shot every boss in the game. We just don't know yet. At least I do appreciate that the AI teammates seem to take reduced damage from the boss and try their best to keep outside of the boss attack circle. That's good. Team wipe is very possible, but that's because you suck at dodging, not the AI standing in the fire. That being said, dodging mechanics just don't exist in this game. There is no dash or parry button, which is very weird. It just looks so wrong when the final boss rapidly throws a bullet hell attack, but you just don't have a tool to quickly dodge them. I heard some theories that this is intentional because you're supposed to use your abilities to make your own dodge. However, I highly doubt that is the case because basic abilities have a relatively long cooldown and there is no iframe. I'm almost certain that they will add dash in the next test from the playtester's feedback. I do also notice a little flaw in their ability design, where anytime you use an ability, another character will swap into your position. This is fine if you're using all melee characters. However, when you swap into a caster or healer in a boss fight, suddenly your squishy ranged characters are dangerously close with the enemy that can easily one-shot them. I think this can be easily fixed by giving a swap character some initial iframe, which can also double as a way to dodge the enemy's attack. One last thing I noticed about the combat is that they should add some kind of command system to direct the AI teammates, like attacking a particular target to set up a combo, to reposition, or to not attack at all. Right now, all AI teammates will attack the nearest enemy after you make the first hit. Sometimes ranged allies will also stand very close to the enemies even though they should attack from afar. As for the story, I cannot read Mandarin, so I cannot tell you much about the plot. However, I still have a lot of concerns here. For one, Hypergriff in their infinite wisdom is sticking to the common trend of amnesiac silent protagonists with some illusion of free choice. We could have a very emotive administrator with complex motivations, feelings, and backstory with actual voice acting. We could have a meaningful interactions between them and the other operators. But nope, Hypergriff decides Genshin's way is the best way. I also have some big doubts that Enfield's lore can stand on its own without the original Arknights behind it, because there are a lot of warning flags about the lack of originality in the form of fan baiting. This Lung girl is called Chen Xianyu, definitely different from Chen Huijie. Or the fact they included the scenes in the trailer with the statue of Patriot or about Rhodes Island crashing into Babel, even though those are only in the dream sequence at the beginning of the game. I guess if there is a saving grace, the administrator's mysterious origin is at the heart of the plot. So here's hoping they can do something interesting about it. God forbid, real character progression for the protagonist. I know I'm being very harsh here, and I sincerely hope that I'm wrong. Maybe there are some interesting lore reasons behind all of this fanbaiting. Maybe all of it are just some cool little references that don't matter in the plot. However, if Enfield's purpose is to attract a completely new audience, then Enfield's story needs to be able to stand on its own 2 feet. It's also inevitable that Hypergriff will stumble as they transition from writing pure text on a visual novel to a cutscene in a 3D world. I just hope they don't take 3 years to be good, because I don't know if they can survive that long against the competition. So in conclusion, in this technical test, I am only sold on the base building and the overall graphics of the game. It is a stable working game with no apparent bugs or glitches. Everything else is still to be determined, something I have to try out on my own. Until then, nothing is final. Everything can still change. I'm still going to try Endfield when it launches, or if I suddenly get invited into its beta testing. But let's be realistic here, I'm too small of a channel to get that. Let me know what you guys think about this video in the comment section down below. And with that, I think I'll see you guys later on Talos 2.